So when I'm answering your questions, do you want me to look at you? Okay, on the camera. I don't know what to say. I thought this was a safe neighborhood. That's why I moved here. I moved here about 6 years ago, and we've honestly never had any problems in the time that we've lived here. And so I guess I didn't really take any major precautions because it didn't seem like that kind of place. Like, I'm not an idiot. I still lock my doors and I put cedar chips in my closet, but beyond that, I'm always going to be paranoid, you know? Every time I go to wash a sweater, open a drawer, I'm always going to be wondering. And I think I just want the ignorance back, you know?
So I found moths. I found one moth in my closet one day and took a mental note. The next day I saw another moth and freaked out. I spent the next week deep cleaning my entire apartment, but especially my closet and bedroom. The first thing I did was taking literally everything out of my closet and my bedroom, including my mattress and my bed frame and my underbed storage. Everything. I was taking zero chances because the second I saw moths, I was thinking moths, and my skin started crawling, wondering if there were larvae currently on my clothing. I can't, no. Zero tolerance for infestation.
I will not tolerate infestation.
I'm fine living in a world with bugs. I'm fine living in a home with bugs. I draw the line at bugs crawling on me, and I feel like that's a fair line to draw. So after getting everything out of my closet, I machine washed everything that could be machine washed. Shrunk quite a few items of clothing because I machine wash everything on hot when ordinarily I wash everything on the cold cycle. But like I said, I was not taking any chances. If it means I had to give up a few t-shirts, I was gonna have to give up a few t-shirts. Now for clarity, I saw these two moths in my actual closet, but my actual closet is right next to my bedroom, and I have a lot of underbed storage in these cloth zip-up bags and clothing, tons of clothing in storage in those bags. So I completely took those apart and took out all the clothes from there and also washed all of those. Same with my clothes, same with my bedding. I even washed my pillows. I got, in some cases, new pillow inserts. Have I made it clear I wasn't taking any chances? Anything that could not be hand washed got assessed. Either it was going to be decluttered from my home, which I felt awful about because it's so wasteful, but I'm not going to donate something that could have moths in it, or I put it into zipper bags. I remember seeing these commercials in the 2000s for the space saver bags, and you vacuum seal them and they shrink up, and I thought the commercials were always really fun and satisfying, and I ended up buying a ton of those bags, and you know what? They are really fun and satisfying. The commercials hold up. So anything that could not be machine washed, I went ahead and put in those bags until I could find the time to actually hand wash those items. At the same time as I was making sure everything was being washed, I wasn't introducing anything back into the space until I had fully cleaned the space. So I vacuumed about 8 times over every little nook and cranny. I took my dresser apart, deep cleaned that, and I used vinegar, white vinegar spray, and cleaned everything there because I heard that can also be a deterrent, and I already had some on hand, so I just was really liberal with the vinegar spray. I washed the walls. I did all that to the closet, rinsed and repeated for the bedroom as well, and then thoroughly cleaned the rest of the apartment, but not quite to the extent that I did the closet and the bedroom. This entire process was exhausting. I feel like I don't even own that much stuff compared to your average American, and it took me a full week to deep clean everything, and it was exhausting. Thankfully, my husband was on board with the insanity and was very helpful in that process, but I definitely took the lead on most of it because I needed to see for my own eyes that it was being done a certain way. All encompassing, that was step 1, was just cleaning. During and after the cleaning process, I mainly dove into assessing the situation. I was like, great, everything's cleaned up. I just need to look for signs of moths, and I need to see, does it look like we still have some? I know I've deep cleaned everything. Did some survive the deep cleaning? I just needed as much information as possible. So I thoroughly inspected all of my clothing for signs of larvae. And I did not find any. I looked for signs of larva damage, so the holes that people typically get in clothing or the thinning of clothing that's typically from the larva, not from the actual moths in the adult phase. But I didn't really find any holes either. As soon as everything was cleaned and put back in the closet, closet, I put up moth trap. As soon as everything was cleaned and put back into the very clean rooms, I put up moth traps so that I could assess, okay, are the moths still here? And sort of monitoring and keeping an eye on the situation, hoping if I get a ton of moths in these moth traps, then I got a big problem. Now, it's been about 2 months since I put up these moth traps, and I have only caught 2 moths in the moth traps, and that was right away. No new ones have appeared, and my husband and I have put them in different places within the apartment. My husband said that he found one more moth somewhere else in the apartment and decided to put a moth trap up there. So we've kind of scattered them and put them in different locations to keep an eye, but so far we haven't really caught any. Once we had moths in the moth trap, I also looked up how to identify closet moths, and there are different varieties based on different regions you live in, and I think you can find multiple varieties within the same region you live in. So just doing research specifically for your area, what's most common, what do they look like for you? But in most cases, closet moths tend to be sort of that like light yellowy tan shimmery color, and they're pretty small, about 1 centimeter. So taking a look at the moths in the trap and just looking at a bunch of pictures online was pretty confident that I was dealing with closet moths specifically. I also took the opportunity to look in my pantry because pantry moths can be kind of a common problem, and fingers crossed I haven't seen any in there. I really don't want to jinx it because I don't know what the universe is doing, but I think it's punishing me for saying a week earlier, no, I've never really had moths as a problem. Never say stuff like that. The universe will test you. So in this whole phase, I just did a buttload of research. And the strangest part and the most frustrating part was the amount of misinformation out there and conflicting information. As soon as someone said something, you found another article that said that was wrong. It was incredibly frustrating, but after reading through what feels like 100 different articles and videos and assorted research across the interwebs, I was able to find some consistent information that was true among most of what people were saying. Keep in mind, it's the internet. Anyone can say anything. So you can have some random person saying, cleaning doesn't do anything. That's not how you're going to get rid of moths. It does. Cleaning does help. It's not the only thing, and it's not a surefire way of saying, I cleaned this room so now the moths are gone. It's just a good reminder when you're doing any sort of secondary research that you want multiple sources, you want multiple different types of sources. The ones that are the most trustworthy are ones that have been peer-reviewed or coming from an academic standpoint or actual legit research instead of just saying, here's my opinions. Like me, this is not official research, okay? The video you're watching, this is a first-hand account of what happened, but it's not in-depth research on moths. So after diving in, I found an article through, I think, the New York Times that pretty well summarized most of the good information that I could find across the internet. So I will link that below because I just think it's the most reliable and the most all-encompassing collection of information that I could find. I will also say this is not fact, it's an opinion. I had the cedar chips, I had the lavender, I don't think they do anything. I kind of think it's similar to putting a helmet on before you get hit by a semi-truck at 60 miles an hour. Like, it's not gonna make the situation worse, probably, but it's also not gonna save you. So like, go for it if you like peace of mind or you just want your closet to smell good like cedar and lavender, but don't go thinking that's all you need to do in the world of prevention. What I'm doing now and moving forward, what I will likely continue doing indefinitely, possibly forever, is anything that's made of fabric that I have in storage is in vacuum sealed bags. Before I go to open any vacuum sealed bags, I will inspect for moths and larvae and eggs. When I go to transition from my warmer weather clothes to my colder weather clothes, I will thoroughly wash both batches of clothes, completely dry them, vacuum seal up the ones I'm going to put in storage, and put up the new ones. It's really just making sure everything stays clean and making sure moths can't get to it in the meantime. Also, from what I've seen, moths don't really like agitation. So if you have a pretty curated small wardrobe and you're wearing your pieces very often and you're going through your drawers pretty often, they don't like that agitation. They don't like the access to light. They don't like the movement. So it's not necessarily the clothes in your closet you have to worry about as much as it is the clothing you have in storage that you really need to worry about. Stuff where you're just leaving it be in the dark for like months or years at a time, where moths can just go crazy and then you don't realize it until it's too late. In general, I just plan to keep my spaces pretty clean, continuing to vacuum on a regular basis. When I clean, I prefer cleaning with a white vinegar, diluted white vinegar mixture. And I think I'm gonna keep the moth traps up. They're certainly not the most aesthetic thing in the world. I do not like having them out and about, but I would rather know right away if I have a moth problem on hand. So I appreciate the peace of mind in knowing that that moth trap has been up for 2 months and there's only 2 moths in there. And that those 2 moths both showed up within a week of me doing this deep cleaning process, and there have been no additional moth sightings since. Excluding the one my husband saw in a different room, but we don't need to think about that. He said he wasn't sure if they were officially a closet moth or a different type of moth. So I'm not going to think about it because I'm already doing all the things. There's nothing more I can do if he saw another moth. Like, even if there was a big moth problem, the only next step to do would be like fumigation or going to war against these things. But I think for now, this is just kind of the most that I can do. I also read that in the best conditions, moths, the entire life cycle can last for about 2.5 years. I'm going to up that to 3 years for me personally. So come spring of 2028, I can maybe relax a little bit, but I will stay vigilant until then. Oh boy. I did end up putting most of my hand knits into a vacuum sealed bag. I was surprised it all fit in one. Granted, this is a huge bag, and I have decluttered many sweaters over the years. So I'm kind of thankful it all fit into one bag, and I've been inspecting this on a regular basis, still have seen 0 signs of larvae. I have a pretty good eye for that kind of thing, and I would hope that it would be obvious. Like if there are larvae in here, I really hope that I would be able to see it. So I've been thoroughly inspecting this, and just to be extra safe and borderline paranoid, I discovered these moths in April. These will remain in storage until October, meaning if there were any eggs in there, they would most certainly be hatched by then. Most would probably have died by then, but the ones that would still be alive, because they do have access to wool, which is food to them. At the 6-month phase, I should be able to see larvae if there are any, and I will do a thorough inspection on each piece of clothing. I will take them out one by one, and I will be deep cleaning them, washing them, maybe sticking them in the freezer for a week at a time. Probably having to lower the temperature in my freezer, though, if I really want to try that. I don't think sticking stuff in the freezer for a week, in my mind, again, research doesn't necessarily back up this statement. It's not enough for me. It's not enough to just stick them in the freezer. I don't think that's going to be the end-all be-all way of killing the larvae, if there are any. But it's just another thing that I can do. So deep cleaning, hardcore washing these when the time comes, sticking them in the freezer, maybe washing them again just to be extra certain, and then slowly reintroducing them into my closet. Now, I really, really don't want to jinx anything, but I think we caught the issue before it became an issue. I have been extremely vigilant, keeping an eye and heavily inspecting everything. I have seen 0 evidence of moth-related damage or larvae in my closet with any of my clothes or my knits. So I really do think we caught and addressed the issue before it became a real problem. Through hefty inspection and monitoring, I feel confident saying that they did not make their way to my yarn stash, so any projects I was working on are totally fine. I think my yarn stash is totally fine. It's not surprising too. I keep it in a completely separate space that's on the opposite end of my apartment than my clothing, and I keep all of my yarn in like sealed plastic bins all the time. So I would be impressed. I also agitate that a lot. Like I'm constantly taking all the yarn out, putting it back in, reorganizing it. So I'd be impressed if a moth found their way into there, and I feel very comfortable saying that they did not make their way in. This is also another reason for me not to have a large stash. I don't like the idea of having yarn sitting around for years and years and years not getting used, and I feel that even more so now with my mind on the moths. If you haven't seen it, I would personally recommend watching Knit Cheek's video where she did a talk on moths, because she has had to deal with that issue consistently over the years, and her video just made me feel a lot more comfortable about the whole thing since she's been dealing with moths repeatedly over the past few years, and she's got a pretty good handle on it. She also made this statement that she was afraid of mentioning it to other people for fear that people would think that they're gonna like catch moths from her. I feel that. I feel worried that people are gonna think they're gonna catch moths from me. And if I thought that were the case, I would seal myself off from the world and never go to a yarn store ever again, I promise. It's like leaving the house when I have COVID. That's just not happening. You might hear a little stuffiness in my voice right now, and that's because I'm sick and I have not left the house in 4 days, because I do not leave the house when I'm sick. So rest assured, people in my life, if I'm giving you yarn or a hand knit object that I have made, believe me, I have thoroughly washed it. I have inspected it. I am very, very confident that you will not be catching moths from me. And I am also so happy. For a third time, I don't want to jinx it. I am so happy I haven't noticed any larvae. So I think we just saw a couple moths float in the wet springtime, where we start seeing a few more bugs kind of entering the equation in the apartment. It's just that time of year, and caught it right away. And if that continues to be proven to be the case, then I'm not glad it happened, but maybe a little bit, because I have taken so many measures to prepare for the future where I'm pretty confident moths are not going to be able to do significant damage because everything in my apartment is now being properly contained. It's being properly cleaned. So if I had to notice a moth, I'm glad that I just noticed like 2 adult moths rather than having to deal with an entire infestation, having to get rid of all my stuff or fumigate or whatever. I'm just glad that it happened this way. So as a non-expert, the message I would leave people with is go ahead and read that New York Times article and do your own research. Figure out what information you decide you want to trust. I know what information I've decided I want to trust. I think the key takeaways for if you realize that you have moths is just cleaning, proper storage, and monitoring via setting up moth traps. Those are the 3 key things to keep an eye on. It's not the end of the world. It's really not. Honestly, I shouldn't be all that surprised that I haven't seen any larvae in my hand nets because I wear them all the time. They're in constant rotation, so they don't just sit weathered away in storage for ages and ages not being worn. They're being constantly moved around, so they wouldn't even have a chance to settle in there. I'm glad I didn't record this part until several months after the initial incident. I feel a lot better about it now. I'm feeling a lot less emotionally driven by the entire thing. I'm able to have a more logical approach to it. As usual, everything will be okay. If you're someone that has dealt with moths in the past, what advice would you give to people that haven't had to deal with it? What are certain preventative measures that people can take without feeling like their entire life is revolving around moth inspection? I personally would just recommend that people put up moth traps. Like, stick one in your closet, that way you know. They're not that expensive. They're certainly not the cutest things in the world, but they're pretty small and you can stick them in the back of your closet where you don't really have to look at it, but that way you know before anything happens. That's it for me today. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next one.